There are gifts that feel like love, and there are gifts that are something else entirely. The trouble is, from the outside, they look exactly the same. I want to tell you something before I get into this. I've been a mother for 38 years. I've made mistakes, plenty of them. I've said the wrong thing at the wrong moment, stayed quiet when I should have spoken, and once, when my daughter was 7, I accidentally threw away her favorite stuffed rabbit because I thought it was garbage. She still brings that up at Thanksgiving. My point is, I am not a perfect woman. I have never claimed to be. But I do know my own family, or at least I thought I did. It was a Tuesday in early March when my son-in-law gave me the watch. Not my birthday. Not Christmas. Not Mother's Day. Just a random Tuesday, which was the first thing that felt slightly off, though I didn't let myself linger on that. I was at my daughter's house. They'd invited me for dinner. Just a normal weeknight thing. Pasta and garlic bread, the kind of meal that feels like it belongs to a different, simpler life. My granddaughter was there too, sitting on the kitchen floor, building something out of Legos while the adults talked. She was 5 and completely absorbed in whatever she was constructing, narrating it softly to herself under her breath. My son-in-law, I'll call him my son-in-law, because that's what he is, even if lately the word sits a little strange in my mouth. He came in from the living room holding a small white box with a ribbon on it. Cream-colored ribbon. The kind you'd use for something deliberate. "We got you something," he said. My daughter was at the stove stirring the sauce. She didn't turn around. "You didn't need to do that," I said, the way you say it when someone hands you a gift and you genuinely mean it. "It's nothing big," he said. "We just saw it and thought of you." Inside the box was a watch. A nice one. Not extravagant, but quality. Silver band, clean face, the kind of watch that goes with everything and lasts 20 years if you take care of it. I held it in my palm and looked at it for a moment. "This is beautiful," I said. "Put it on," he said. So I did. I clasped it around my left wrist, right where I always wear a watch, and I held my arm out to look at it properly. It caught the light. My granddaughter looked up from her Legos, said pretty, and went back to her construction project. We had dinner. We talked about nothing in particular, her job, his work, a neighbor who'd put up a fence that was apparently 2 inches over the property line and causing a whole neighborhood dispute. Normal stuff. I wore the watch the whole evening. When I left, my son-in-law gave me a hug at the door, which he doesn't always do, and told me to drive safe. I thought about the watch on the drive home, about how unexpected it was, about how my daughter had barely commented on it all evening. I told myself I was being paranoid. People give unexpected gifts. That's allowed. I set it on my nightstand when I got home and didn't think about it again for almost 2 weeks. The thing that changed everything was my neighbor. Her name is Harriet. She's 71, retired schoolteacher, the kind of woman who still makes pie from scratch and has opinions about everything, and is almost always right about those opinions. We've been neighbors for 16 years. She waters my plants when I travel. I pick up her mail when she's visiting her sister in Phoenix. We walk together on Tuesday and Thursday mornings when the weather cooperates. One Thursday in mid-March, I wore the watch on our walk. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. I'd been wearing it most days. It fit well. It looked nice. Harriet noticed it about halfway through the loop around the park. She's observant the way teachers are, trained to catch the thing you're not saying. "New watch," she said. "My son-in-law gave it to me," I said. She didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at it. "Can I see it?" she asked. I unclasped it and handed it to her. She turned it over in her hands, examining the back. Then she stopped walking. "Where did you say you got this?" "My son-in-law." "Why?" She turned it over again, slower this time. Her expression had changed into something I couldn't quite read. Not alarm exactly, but not nothing either. Focused. The way she used to look when a student gave an answer that didn't quite add up. "My nephew works in security," she said. "Technology security. He showed me something last year." She paused. "There's a seam here that isn't decorative." I looked at where she was pointing. There was a small, nearly invisible line along the edge of the back casing. I'd thought it was just part of the design. "These are modified," Harriet said carefully. He showed me one just like this. The back panel can house a microphone. Sometimes a GPS chip. I stared at her. You're telling me this watch. I'm telling you it might be, she said. I'm not certain, but I'd have someone look at it before you wear it again. I took the watch back from her. It felt different in my hand now. Heavier, somehow. The silver band I'd been clasping around my wrist every morning suddenly felt like something I didn't recognize. We didn't finish the walk. I went home and sat at my kitchen table for a long time, holding the watch and trying to think clearly. The first thing I felt was foolish, because I'd worn it every day. To the grocery store, to my book club, to my doctor's appointment, to a lunch where my friend Cora and I had talked for 2 hours about her divorce, which was ugly and private and not meant for anyone else's ears. The second thing I felt, and I want to be honest here, because this is the part that still hurts, was grief, not anger. Not yet, just this deep, tired sadness. Because if Harriet was right, the gift hadn't been a gift at all. And if it hadn't been a gift, then the whole Tuesday dinner, the cream ribbon, the hug at the door, none of it was what I thought it was. I called my nephew who works in IT and described it to him without telling him where it came from. He said what Harriet said, "Bring it in, have it looked at." He called me 2 days later. "Aunt Loretta," he said, "I don't want to scare you, but this has been modified. There's a microphone and a transmitter embedded in the back panel. It's a listening device." I sat very still. "Are you sure?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I'm sure," he said. "This is not factory-installed hardware. Someone put this in deliberately. Whoever gave this to you wanted to hear your conversations." I thanked him. I hung up. And then I sat at my kitchen table for what might have been an hour, though I couldn't tell you exactly. I watched the afternoon light move across the floor. I thought about my daughter, about the way she hadn't turned around from the stove when he handed me the box, about all the things I'd said out loud in the past 2 weeks, in my own home, in other people's homes, believing I was alone or among people I trusted. Here's the thing people don't understand until they're standing inside it. When someone close to you does something like this, the first question isn't what. The first question is why. What I knew about my son-in-law, he'd been in my daughter's life for 6 years. They married 4 years ago, small ceremony, backyard of his parents' house in Connecticut. He worked in finance. Or he had, until about 8 months ago when his firm had restructured and he'd been let go. He'd told my daughter it was a layoff. That's what she'd told me. What I'd suspected but not yet confirmed. Money was tight. My daughter had mentioned it once, carefully. The way you mention something you've been told not to talk about. They'd refinanced. She'd cut back her hours at the nonprofit to pick up some freelance work that paid better. Small signs, but I'd been watching. What I did not yet know, exactly what he was looking for. What he was hoping to hear. The obvious answer, the one that sat in my stomach like a stone, was inheritance. My late husband's estate. The house I owned outright, which was not a small thing in this market. The investment accounts, the CDs, the old savings bonds I'd kept in a fireproof box that I'd mentioned once, in passing, at dinner, in a conversation I could no longer fully reconstruct. What had I said? What had I said with that watch on my wrist? I started writing it down, every conversation I could remember. Every phone call I'd taken at home, every exchange with my sister, with my financial advisor, with my attorney, with friends. I filled 4 pages in a yellow legal pad. Some of it was innocuous. Some of it was not. In the second week, I'd talked to my attorney, on the phone, in my kitchen, about updating my will. We'd discussed the house. We'd discussed the trust I was setting up for my granddaughter. We'd discussed the specific language around asset distribution, and I'd asked him to read back a particular clause. That conversation had been captured, all of it. I didn't cry. I want to say that, not because crying would have been wrong, but because what I felt wasn't exactly sadness anymore. It was something cooler, cleaner, something that had been grief an hour ago and was now something that felt a lot like purpose. I called my attorney and told him what had happened. He was quiet for a moment and then said very calmly that I needed to proceed carefully and not alert anyone yet. "Document everything," he said. "Don't wear the watch. Don't mention the watch. And don't discuss any financial matters on your home phone or in any location where that device might have been in the room." I asked him what my options were. He told me. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. Not because I was afraid, though I was, some nights, in a way that was hard to name, but because I had to continue being normal. I had to call my daughter on Sunday evenings the way I always did. I had to have dinner with them twice during that period, sit at their table, eat the food they cooked, watch my son-in-law pour wine, and make conversation about spring cleaning and whether they should repaint the living room, all while knowing what I knew, all while watching him for signs. I found what I was looking for on a Wednesday evening, about 3 weeks in. My daughter had texted to see if I could come over and watch my granddaughter for a few hours while she went to a work event. I said, of course. When I arrived, my son-in-law was home, which I hadn't expected. He said he was working from home that afternoon, then was going to a friend's thing later. Normal enough. He left around 5:30. My daughter left around the same time. They both kissed my granddaughter goodbye. Both told me there was leftover soup in the fridge. Both drove off in separate cars. I sat on the floor with my granddaughter and helped her build a Lego horse farm for about 45 minutes. She wanted all the horses to have names. We named them. It was completely wonderful, and I want you to know that even in the middle of all of this, there were these moments that were just pure, untouched by any of it. After she went down for an early night, I was tidying up in the living room when I noticed my son-in-law had left his laptop on the coffee table, slightly open. I wasn't going to touch it. I moved past it twice. The third time I passed, the screen woke up from sleep, and I caught a glimpse of something before I could look away. It was an email. His email was open, and the message on the screen had the name of my attorney in the subject line. I stopped. I am not a woman who goes through other people's things. I want to be clear about that. But this was not other people's things. This was my name, my attorney's name. A subject line that contained both. I read what was on the screen. I didn't click further. I didn't touch the laptop, but what was visible was enough. He had written to someone, a name I didn't recognize, summarizing what appeared to be details from my financial conversations. Not verbatim, but close. Close enough that the source was unmistakable. He referenced the house, the trust, a specific account number that I had read aloud to my attorney on the phone while standing in my kitchen in February. I stepped back from the laptop. My hands were completely steady, which surprised me. I took out my phone and photographed the screen. Then I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood at the sink for a few minutes looking at the backyard while everything settled into place around me. There are moments in life when the thing you feared most is confirmed, and instead of falling apart, you become very still. Very clear. Like all the noise finally stops and you can hear exactly what you need to do. I called my attorney from the backyard, speaking quietly, my back to the house. He said, "Don't touch anything else. Come to my office tomorrow morning." I said, "All right." I went back inside, sat on the couch, and watched 2 episodes of a cooking show I like until my daughter came home. I need to tell you about my daughter. Because if you're a mother, and I think many of you are, you already know that none of this was simple. You already know that the person I was most worried about in all of this wasn't myself. It wasn't even the money, though the money mattered. It was her. My daughter is 34 years old. She works at a nonprofit that does housing advocacy. She drives a 12-year-old Honda. She volunteers on weekends. She is, and I say this knowing every mother thinks this about her own child, genuinely a good person. She is also, in the way that good people sometimes are, too trusting, too willing to assume that the people around her want what she wants. I did not know how much she knew. That was the question I'd been circling for 3 weeks. Was she part of this? Had she helped him? Or was she being used just as I was? Just in a different way, from a different angle. I didn't have the answer that night. I went home. I tried to sleep. I mostly failed. In the morning, I went to my attorney's office. I laid out everything: the watch, my nephew's findings, the photograph of the email, the legal pad, with 4 pages of reconstructed conversations. He looked at all of it without interrupting me. When I finished, he said, "You've done exactly the right things. Now let me tell you what happens next." What happened next was not fast. That's the thing about doing things correctly. It takes time. There were consultations. There were conversations with law enforcement about the legality of the recording device, which in our state constituted a serious violation. There was a quiet, careful restructuring of my estate documents to ensure that nothing captured in those conversations could be leveraged against my actual wishes. And there was a conversation I had to have with my daughter. I drove to her house on a Saturday morning, 3.5 weeks after I'd found the email. She was home alone. My son-in-law was at the gym. My granddaughter was at a birthday party. I'd timed it deliberately. I brought coffee. 2 cups from the place on the corner she likes. I sat down at her kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten dinner the night of the watch, and I put her coffee in front of her, and I said, "There are some things I need to tell you, and I need you to listen before you say anything." She looked at my face, and something in her expression shifted immediately. That thing daughters do, reading their mother before a single word is spoken. I told her everything. I kept my voice even. I laid it out the way my attorney had advised, factually, sequentially, without accusation. I showed her the photograph of the email on my phone. I told her what my nephew had found. I told her what my attorney had told me. She didn't say a word for the first few minutes. She sat very still, both hands around her coffee cup. I watched her face go through something complicated and difficult and private. When she finally spoke, she said, "I didn't know," and then she said it again, more quietly. "Mom, I didn't know." I believed her. I want to tell you why, because I know some of you are thinking, how could you be sure? The answer is that I couldn't be completely sure. Not right then, but I knew my daughter. I knew the specific texture of her face when she was lying. I'd been watching that face for 34 years, and what I saw in that moment was not guilt. What I saw was devastation, she cried. I did not, though I came close. I reached across the table and put my hand over hers, and we sat there for a while without talking. "What do I do?" she asked eventually. I said, "You don't have to decide anything today." What she decided, over the following weeks, is her story to tell, not mine. I will say only that she made choices that were difficult and brave, and that I was proud of her, and that my granddaughter still builds Lego horse farms on the kitchen floor, and we still name every horse together. My son-in-law moved out in April. There are legal proceedings I won't detail here because they are ongoing, and my attorney has advised me to say nothing specific. What I want to tell you, what I actually came here to tell you, is this. There was a morning, about 2 months after everything had come apart, when I was sitting on my back porch with coffee, and Harriet came over the fence with tomatoes from her garden, the way she does every summer, and she set them on the railing and looked at me and said, "You doing okay?" And I thought about the question seriously before I answered, because Harriet doesn't ask things she doesn't mean. "I'm doing better than I expected," I said, "which I know isn't the same as okay." She nodded. She's lost enough in her life to understand the difference. I thought about the watch, still sitting in my attorney's office as evidence. I thought about that Tuesday dinner, the cream ribbon, the way I'd put it on and held out my wrist to admire it. I thought about all the things I'd said out loud, believing I was safe. I thought about my granddaughter naming the horses. About the way she'd looked up from her Legos and said, "Pretty," when she saw the watch on my arm, completely guileless, completely herself. I want to be careful here, because I don't think there's a neat lesson in all of this. Life doesn't work the way those sayings make it sound. Sometimes the people who betray you had their reasons, even if their reasons were wrong. Sometimes the damage can't be entirely undone. Sometimes the best you can do is document it, protect yourself, trust the right people, and then sit on your back porch in the summer with your neighbor's tomatoes and figure out what comes next. What I'll tell you is what I tell my daughter. Trust is not the same as naivety. You can care for people and still pay attention. You can be loving and still notice when something feels off. You can be a good mother, a good neighbor, a good woman, and still know when to pick up the phone and call a lawyer. I still haven't replaced the watch. I've been wearing my old one. A simple thing, nothing special, battery replaced twice, face a little scratched. It keeps perfect time. Some mornings I look down at it and think about how much I didn't know a year ago. And then I drink my coffee, and I go take my walk, and I come home and call my daughter, and I do what I always do. You keep going. That's the whole thing. You find out what you need to find out, you do what you need to do, and then you keep going. Don't forget to trust your instincts, even when you can't explain them. Especially then. I've lived long enough to know that the small thing that doesn't feel right, the gift that arrives on no occasion, the ribbon that seems too deliberate, the moment your daughter doesn't turn around from the stove. Those small things are worth a second look. Thank you for being here with me today. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're a mother watching out for her family the best she can, you're not alone. None of us are.